Reverend Augustus Blackwell discovered the photograph while sorting through donations for the church rummage sale. It was tucked inside a water-damaged Bible, its edges curled and yellowed with age. The image showed a woman in a simple cotton dress embracing a young boy outside what appeared to be the Old Presbyterian Church on Millbrook Road, the very church where Augustus had served for 15 years. The woman's face was turned away from the camera, her features obscured by shadow and the degradation of time. But the boy stared directly at the lens with an expression that made Augustus's breath catch in his throat. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary smile, but the longer he looked, the more wrong it appeared. The angle of the mouth was too wide, stretching past where lips should end. The eyes held no light, no reflection, as if they were painted on rather than captured by the camera. Scrawled on the back in faded ink, Constance and Samuel, June 14, 1931, May God protect us. Augustus showed the photograph to Martha Hendricks, the church secretary who had worked there for 30 years and knew every face in the congregation's history. Martha's hands trembled when she saw it. "That's Constance Merriweather," she whispered. "Lord have mercy, I thought all traces of her were destroyed." "Who was she?" Augustus asked. Martha wouldn't meet his eyes. "You should burn that photograph, Reverend. Some stories are better left buried with the dead." But Augustus Blackwell had never been one to leave mysteries unsolved. That night, Augustus descended into the church basement where records dating back to 1847 were stored in wooden filing cabinets. The air was thick with mold and the musty scent of decaying paper. A single bulb swung overhead, casting dancing shadows across the stone walls. He found the ledger for 1931 and traced his finger down the entries. Births, baptisms, marriages, funerals, the ordinary rhythm of parish life. Then he found it. June 15, 1931. A single line, written in different ink than the surrounding entries, as if added later. Constance Merriweather. Services refused. May the Lord have mercy on her soul and protect this congregation from the evil she brought among us. No mention of a funeral, no death certificate filed, just that cryptic, damning line. Augustus pulled the ledger for June 1931 and began reading the weekly reports filed by Reverend Josiah Crane, his predecessor from that era. The entries grew increasingly frantic. June 1, young Samuel Merriweather has taken ill. His mother reports strange behavior. The boy does not sleep. June 7, Constance Merriweather came to me in distress. She claims her son is not her son. I assured her it was merely fever affecting the child's temperament. She was not comforted. June 10, I visited the Merriweather home. What I witnessed there, I cannot commit to paper. I have sent for Bishop Aldridge. We require guidance beyond my authority. June 14, the bishop arrived. We attempted. The rest of the page had been torn out. The subsequent pages were blank until June 22, when a new hand, shaky and uncertain, wrote, "Reverend Crane has suffered a collapse of the nerves. Father Edmund Price will serve in his stead until he recovers. God help us all." Augustus sat in the cold basement, the photograph beside him, and stared at that incomplete sentence. We attempted. Attempted what? The next morning, Augustus visited the Millbrook Historical Society. A young woman named Dorothy Winslow helped him search property records. The Merriweather house had stood on Ashwood Lane until it burned down in July 1931, less than a month after the photograph was taken. "Fire started in the middle of the night," Dorothy read from a yellowed newspaper clipping. "No survivors. Constance Merriweather, aged 29, and her son Samuel, aged 7, perished in the blaze. Authorities ruled it accidental, though some locals—" She paused, frowning. "What did the locals say?" Augustus prompted. Dorothy showed him another clipping, this one from a smaller publication. The headline read, "Tragedy or Mercy? Whispers surround Merriweather deaths." The article was circumspect but suggestive. It mentioned strange occurrences in the weeks before the fire. Neighbors reported hearing voices at all hours, though only the widow and child lived there. The milkman claimed Samuel had appeared in the window at midnight, staring with eyes that didn't blink, didn't move, like a doll's eyes. One quote stood out. Constance Merriweather told my wife just days before her death that something had replaced her boy. She said, "When I look at him now, he looks back at me with something ancient and hungry. That's not my Samuel anymore." We thought grief had driven her mad. Now I wonder if she saw clearly what the rest of us refused to believe. Augustus studied the photograph again. That smile, those dead painted eyes. The fire had been ruled accidental. But Augustus was beginning to suspect it had been anything but. Augustus tracked down the current location of Bishop Aldridge's personal papers through the diocesan archives. They were housed at St. Catherine's Seminary, 3 hours north. He made the drive on his day off, the photograph tucked carefully in his breast pocket. The seminary librarian, an elderly priest named Father Bernard, led him to a locked cabinet in the rare documents room. "Bishop Aldridge's papers are restricted," Father Bernard explained. "He requested they remain sealed for 100 years after his death. He died in 1949, so they shouldn't be opened until 2049. "Why sealed?" Augustus asked. Father Bernard's expression darkened. "Because of what happened in Millbrook. The bishop never spoke of it, but it changed him. He resigned his position within a year and spent the rest of his life in a monastery in constant prayer." He paused. "What's your interest in this, Reverend Blackwell?" Augustus showed him the photograph. Father Bernard went pale. After a long moment, he pulled a key from beneath his cassock. "Some seals," he said quietly, "are meant to be broken." Inside the cabinet was a single leather journal. Augustus opened it with trembling hands. The entries were sparse, written in a tight, controlled script that occasionally dissolved into wild, erratic scrawling. June 12, 1931. "Reverend Crane has summoned me to Millbrook. He writes of a child who has changed. I suspect mere illness, but his distress compels my presence." June 13, 1931. "I have seen the boy. Dear God in heaven, I have looked into those eyes. Crane was right to call me. This is no illness. This is something else entirely, something very old." June 14, 1931. "We attempted the ritual Romanum. The child, the thing wearing the child's skin, laughed. It spoke in voices. Latin, Aramaic, languages I did not recognize. It told us things. Things about ourselves, our secrets, our sins. Constance Merriweather wept through it all, begging us to bring her real son back. I fear her true son is long gone." The next entry was dated June 16, but the handwriting was nearly illegible. "It failed, the ritual failed. The thing is still there, still wearing Samuel's face, and now it knows we tried to cast it out. Constance came to me privately. She knows what must be done. She is braver than any of us. She said, 'My boy died the night he stopped recognizing me. What lives in his place is using his body like a costume. I won't let it spread. God forgive us. God forgive her for what she must do.'" The final entry was dated July 2, 1931. "It is done. Constance set the fire herself. I know this, though the authorities will never know. She called me the night before. Said she could hear it moving through the house at night, scratching at the walls, whispering promises of what it would do once it grew strong enough to leave Samuel's body. She asked for my blessing. I gave it. I pray I was right to do so. The thing died in the flames. I felt its passing, a release of pressure in the air like a storm breaking. But before it died, it screamed. And in that scream, I heard it make a promise. I am not the only one. We are patient. We wait in the spaces between. We will return. I cannot continue as bishop. I cannot stand before God's people knowing what I know, that there are things in this world that can steal a child's face and wear it like a mask. I am retiring to St. Jerome's Monastery. I will pray for Constance's soul, and for the soul of the real Samuel, wherever it may be." Augustus closed the journal, his hands shaking. Father Bernard spoke softly. "Why did you come looking for this, Reverend?" "Because," Augustus whispered, "I found that photograph in my church, and I need to know if it's truly over." Father Bernard's expression was grim. "Did you read the bishop's last line?" Augustus nodded. "Then you know the answer," the old priest said. "It's never over, it's only waiting." Augustus returned to Millbrook after dark, his mind churning with what he'd learned. He went straight to the church, intending to lock the photograph away, or perhaps burn it, as Martha had suggested. But when he entered his office, he found Martha Hendricks sitting at his desk, weeping quietly. Spread before her were 3 more photographs, each more disturbing than the last. The first showed a family portrait from 1953. The Johnsons, Augustus recognized them from older congregation records. Father, mother, 2 daughters. But the younger daughter's smile was too wide, her eyes reflecting no light. The second was from 1978, a boy named Timothy Ashford at his first communion. His hands were folded in prayer, but his fingers bent backward at impossible angles. His eyes stared not at the camera, but at something beyond it, something hungry. The third was from 1999, a school photograph of a girl named Rebecca Foster. Everything about the image seemed normal except for the shadow behind her. In that shadow, if you looked carefully, you could see the outline of something tall and thin, something with too many joints, crouching behind the child like a puppeteer. "I found them in the restricted archives," Martha said, her voice hoarse. "I've worked here for 30 years and I never knew, never looked. But after you found that first photograph, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I searched." She looked up at Augustus with red, swollen eyes. "It never stopped, it never left, it just waits. A generation, sometimes 2, and then another child changes. Another family suffers." Augustus felt cold dread settling into his bones. The Johnsons, the Ashfords, the Fosters, what happened to them? Martha's hands trembled as she gathered the photographs. Eleanor Johnson disappeared in 1954. They found her shoes by the river but never found her body. Timothy Ashford died in a car accident in 1979, but his parents swore something else was in the car with them that night, something that caused the crash. Rebecca Foster. She paused, closing her eyes. Rebecca Foster is still alive. Augustus's blood ran cold. Where is she? She teaches Sunday school, here at this church. The lights in the office flickered. Somewhere in the building, a door creaked open. And from the hallway outside, Augustus heard the sound of footsteps, small footsteps, like a child's, slowly approaching his office. But the Sunday school had ended hours ago. The church was supposed to be empty. Augustus moved to close the office door, but Martha grabbed his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "It knows we're talking about it. If you try to lock it out, it will know we're afraid." The footsteps stopped just outside the door. A small voice, a child's voice, spoke. "Reverend Blackwell, are you in there? I can't find my mother." Augustus recognized the voice. It belonged to Emma Whitmore, a 7-year-old girl whose family had just joined the congregation 3 months ago. But Emma's Sunday school class had ended at noon. It was now past 9 in the evening. Martha's face had gone white as chalk. She pulled another photograph from the stack, this one recent, printed on modern photo paper. It showed the Whitmore family at the church picnic last month. And there was Emma, smiling at the camera with that too wide smile, her eyes dark and reflective like polished stones. "Dear God," Augustus breathed, "it's already started again." "Reverend," the child's voice came again, sweet and innocent. "I'm scared, it's dark out here." Augustus looked at Martha. "How do we stop it?" "Constance tried fire," Martha whispered. "The bishop tried exorcism. Nothing worked. It just moved on to the next child and the next and the next." The doorknob began to turn slowly. Augustus made a decision. He grabbed the photographs, all of them, and moved toward the door. "Emma," he called out. "Sweetheart, I'm going to open the door. I need you to stay right where you are, okay?" "Okay, Reverend." The voice was patient, almost amused. Augustus turned to Martha. "Go out the back way. Get to my car and drive to St. Catherine's Seminary. Find Father Bernard. Tell him I need every record they have on entities that possess children. Everything the bishop knew. Go, now. I'm not leaving you here with that thing." "Martha," Augustus's voice was firm. "One of us needs to survive this night to know the truth. Now go." Reluctantly, Martha slipped out through the office's rear door, the one that led to the storage room and the back exit. Augustus waited until he heard her footsteps fade, then opened the office door. Emma Whitmore stood in the darkened hallway. She wore the same pink dress she'd worn to Sunday school that morning, but it was dirty now, streaked with something dark. Her blonde hair hung limp around her pale face. And when she smiled up at him, Augustus saw what the cameras had captured. That too-wide smile, those dead, lightless eyes. "Hello, Reverend," Emma said in a voice that layered upon itself, as if multiple people were speaking through her small throat. "We've been waiting for you to understand. It took you longer than most." Augustus forced himself to remain calm. "What are you?" The thing wearing Emma's face tilted its head at an angle no human neck should bend. "We are old. We were here before your church, before your God. We sleep in the spaces between heartbeats and we hunger." It took a step closer. "And when we hunger, we find vessels, small ones, innocent ones. It's easier to wear a child's face. People trust children." "What did you do to the real Emma?" The smile widened impossibly further. "She's still here, screaming, always screaming, but no one can hear her except us, just like Samuel, just like Alina and Timothy and Rebecca and all the others." The thing gestured around at the church walls. "This place feeds us. So much faith, so much hope, so much light, it makes the darkness we bring so much sweeter." Augustus thought of Bishop Aldridge's words, "We are patient. We wait in the spaces between." "You've been here since the beginning," Augustus said, "since this church was built." "Before," the Emma thing confirmed. "This ground was ours first. The settlers built their church on our hunting ground, so we adapted, we learned, we waited." It giggled a horrible, wet sound. "Every generation we feed, one child per generation, never enough to draw real attention. Always just a tragedy, an accident, a mysterious disappearance." "Why are you telling me this?" The thing's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Because you found the photographs. You connected the pattern, you know the truth now." It took another step forward. "And knowing is dangerous, Reverend Blackwell. Knowledge demands action. Action demands sacrifice." Augustus backed into his office, his hand reaching for the desk drawer where he kept his Bible. The Emma thing laughed. "Your book holds no power here. Neither did the bishop's rituals. Neither did Constance's fire. We cannot be cast out. We cannot be killed. We can only be delayed." "Then I'll delay you," Augustus said, pulling out the Bible. His hands found the photographs tucked inside it, all of them, documenting nearly a century of stolen children. The thing's expression shifted, becoming wary. "What are you doing?" "Exposing you," Augustus said. "These photographs, I'm going to show them to everyone, the whole congregation, the whole town. I'm going to tell them what you are and what you've done. You survived through secrecy, through people believing each tragedy was isolated. But if everyone knows, if everyone is watching for the signs." The Emma thing hissed, its face contorting into something inhuman. "You'll destroy this church. They'll call you mad. They'll run you out of town." "Maybe," Augustus agreed, "but they'll be watching their children, and you won't be able to feed anymore." For a long moment the thing stared at him with ancient, hateful eyes. Then it spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "You are not the first to threaten us with exposure, priest. You won't be the last. We are patient. We have time, generations of time." "But not this generation," Augustus said firmly. "Not this child, not Emma Whitmore." The thing tilted its head again. "Brave words, but the night is long, Reverend, and we are not the only darkness in this church." The lights went out completely. In the absolute blackness, Augustus heard movement, not the small footsteps of a child, but something larger, something that scraped against the walls as it moved. And he realized with growing horror that the thing wearing Emma Whitmore was not alone. It had never been alone. Augustus fumbled for his phone, using its light to pierce the darkness. The beam illuminated the hallway, and what he saw made his breath catch. They stood in a silent line stretching down the corridor, children, dozens of them. Some wore clothing from decades past, simple cotton dresses, knickers, Sunday clothes from the 1930s, 50s, 70s. Others wore modern jeans and t-shirts. All of them had that same too-wide smile, those same dead, empty eyes. "You see us now," they said in unison, their voices creating a horrible chorus. "All of us, every generation, every child we've worn." Augustus recognized faces from the photographs. Samuel Merriweather in his 1931 outfit, Eleanor Johnson in her 1950s dress, Timothy Ashford in his communion suit, Rebecca Foster looking exactly as she had in her school photo, unchanged despite 25 years passing. "Rebecca," Augustus whispered, "you're still alive. The records say you're 30 years old now, teaching Sunday school." The Rebecca thing stepped forward from the line. "This body stopped aging the night we took it. We keep it young, keep it useful. She's been our eyes in this church for decades." That impossible smile. Who better to watch the children than a Sunday school teacher? Augustus felt sick. All those years, all those children Rebecca Foster had been around, and none of them had known what stood among them. "What do you want?" Augustus demanded. The children spoke as one. "To feed, to spread, to wear the faces of the innocent until your kind finally dies away and we can reclaim what was ours. And if I expose you, if I tell everyone what you are." The Emma thing giggled. "Then we'll simply move. We've done it before. When a feeding ground becomes too dangerous, we migrate to the next town, the next church, the next congregation." She gestured to the line of stolen children. "We are legion. We are patient. We are eternal." Augustus's phone buzzed. A text from Martha. "Found something, coming back. Don't engage until I return." But it was too late for that. Augustus looked at the photographs in his hand, then at the line of possessed children before him. An idea was forming, desperate, possibly futile, but the only chance he had. "You said you can't be cast out," Augustus said slowly. "You said rituals don't work, fire doesn't work, but you're still bound by some rules, aren't you? Otherwise you wouldn't need to wait between feedings. You wouldn't need to hide." The children's smiles faltered slightly. Augustus pressed on. "The bishop wrote that when Constance's house burned, he felt your presence leave Samuel's body. He felt it die. So you can be killed. It just requires taking the host with you." "We learned from Constance," the Rebecca thing said, its voice sharp. "We don't keep all our consciousness in one vessel anymore. We spread ourselves across multiple hosts. Kill one and we simply redistribute to the others." She gestured to the line of children. "You'd have to destroy all of us simultaneously, and you don't have the stomach for that, priest. You wouldn't harm children, even ones already dead inside." Augustus looked at each face, saw the suffering behind those empty eyes. How many souls were trapped inside these stolen bodies, screaming silently while something else controlled their limbs? His phone buzzed again. "Martha, almost there, I found the answer, the bishop's final journal. There is a way." Augustus needed to stall. "If you're so powerful, why tell me all this? Why reveal yourself?" The Emma thing stepped closer, her small hand reaching for his. "Because we're offering you a choice, Reverend Augustus Blackwell." The other children moved forward in unison, surrounding him. "Join us," they whispered together. "Let us wear you. We've never had a man of faith before. Think of the access we'd have, the trust, the power. You could help us feed for generations." Augustus recoiled. "Never." "Then you'll die," they said simply. "And we'll find another vessel in this congregation. Perhaps that nice couple's infant son. Bobbies are easiest. They haven't developed enough personality to resist. Rage flooded through Augustus. I won't let you. The church doors burst open. Martha Hendricks ran in, clutching a leather journal, the bishop's final writings. Behind her came Father Bernard from St. Catherine's, and with them, a woman Augustus didn't recognize. Rebecca, Martha shouted, looking at one of the possessed children. Rebecca Foster, if any part of you is still in there, listen to me. Your mother never gave up on you. She's here. The woman behind Martha stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. She was in her 50s, gray-haired and worn. Baby, she whispered, looking at the Rebecca thing. Baby, I know you're still in there. I never stopped looking for a way to save you. For the first time, something flickered in the Rebecca thing's eyes. Something human. Something in pain. Mom, the voice was small, frightened, different from the layered, ancient tones. The other children hissed in unison, their faces contorting. Silence. You are ours. You gave up your name 25 years ago. But Mrs. Foster kept walking forward. I found the bishop's writings. I found what he was too afraid to try. She pulled out a small vial of water. Holy water isn't enough. Exorcism rituals aren't enough. But love, a mother's love, freely given, calling her child home, that creates a beacon, a light in the darkness. She uncorked the vial and threw the water on the Rebecca thing. The reaction was immediate and violent. The thing screamed, not in pain, but in rage. The other children lunged forward, but Father Bernard stepped between them, reading from a prayer book in Latin. And Rebecca's body began to change. The too-wide smile collapsed. The dead eyes suddenly flooded with tears. Mom, she gasped in her true voice. Mom, I've been screaming for 25 years. I've been trapped in here, watching it use my hands, my voice, my... I know, baby, Mrs. Foster sobbed, embracing her daughter. I know, come home now, come home to the light. Rebecca's body began to glow with a soft, warm radiance that pushed back the darkness. And in that moment, Augustus understood what the bishop had missed all those years ago. What Constance Merriweather had never known. The entities could only be driven out by the very thing they tried to destroy. The unbreakable bond between parent and child. Love strong enough to reach across decades of darkness. Martha, Augustus shouted, we need the parents, all of them. Every child who went missing, we need their families. The other possessed children shrieked, a sound that shook the church walls. But it was too late for them. The light from Rebecca was spreading. The church basement became a war room. Augustus, Martha, Father Bernard, and Mrs. Foster worked through the night, using the photographs and church records to track down every family that had lost a child to the entities over the past century. Some parents had died, some had moved away, but enough remained or had descendants who remained, who still remembered, still grieved, still held on to that desperate hope that somehow, impossibly, their child might return. By dawn, they had gathered 17 people in the church sanctuary. The parents of Timothy Ashford, now elderly but fierce in their determination. Alina Johnson's younger sister, who remembered the day her sibling vanished. The descendants of Samuel Merriweather's family, who had heard the whispered stories of what really happened in 1931. And most importantly, the Whitmores, Emma's parents, who had noticed their daughter's strange behavior over the past weeks but had attributed it to adjustment to a new town, new school, new church. The possessed children stood at the altar, their bodies rigid, their faces masks of fury. Rebecca Foster, freed from the entity's control, stood with the other families, her hand clasped tight in her mother's. This won't work, the Emma thing snarled. Not all of these vessels have families present. Not all can be called back. Then we'll free the ones we can, Augustus said firmly. He opened the bishop's final journal and read aloud. Love is the only force that pierces the veil between light and darkness. A parent's love creates a beacon that even the deepest prison cannot contain. Call your children home. The families began to speak, each voice joining the chorus. Samuel Merriweather, son of Constance, come home. Eleanor Johnson, beloved sister, come home. Timothy Ashford, our precious boy, come home. Emma Whitmore, our daughter, come home. One by one, they spoke the names, spoke their love, spoke their grief and their hope and their refusal to let go. And one by one, the children began to change. The Samuel thing screamed as light burst from its chest. The 7-year-old boy's face, frozen for nearly a century, finally aged in seconds, flickering through what he would have looked like at 10, at 20, at 40, at 70, before the body crumbled to ash. But in that final moment, Augustus saw Samuel's true face, young and peaceful, and heard a whispered thank you as the boy's soul finally ascended. Eleanor Johnson's body collapsed as light poured from her eyes. Her sister caught her, weeping. As the young girl aged rapidly and turned to dust, but not before squeezing her sister's hand one last time. Timothy Ashford, Emma Whitmore, one after another the children were freed. But not all of them. 7 of the possessed had no family present, their lines extinct, their names forgotten. These children remained frozen, the entities still clinging to their forms. You've won this battle, they hissed in unison. But we are still here. We will wait. We will feed. And in another generation, when you are dead and forgotten, we will grow strong again. Father Bernard stepped forward, the bishop's journal in his hands. The bishop was wrong about one thing, he said quietly. He thought you were eternal, but you're not. You're parasites, and parasites die when they lose their hosts. He held up a photograph, but this one was different. It showed not a possessed child, but the church itself in 1847 when it was first built. And in the background, barely visible, were symbols carved into the foundation stones. Ancient symbols, binding symbols. The original builders knew, Father Bernard continued. They knew this ground was tainted, so they built the church as a prison, not a sanctuary. Those symbols in the foundation, they were meant to contain you, to trap you here so you couldn't spread beyond this place. The entity's eyes widened with something that might have been fear. But the symbols have weakened over time, Father Bernard said. The church has been remodeled, expanded. The binding has loosened. That's how you gain the strength to take hosts, to spread your consciousness across multiple vessels. Augustus understood. If we restore the symbols, strengthen the binding. We trap them again, Martha finished, forever this time. The possessed children lunged forward, but Rebecca Foster and the other freed families formed a barrier, their combined love creating a wall of light that the entities couldn't cross. Over the next 3 days, they worked. Augustus and a team of trusted parishioners excavated the foundation, uncovering the original binding symbols. They found a scholar of ancient languages who helped them understand the inscriptions, protection prayers in languages that predated Christianity, drawn from even older faiths that had recognized the darkness in this ground. They carved the symbols deeper, reinforced them with iron and salt, and the blood of those who had lost children to the entities, freely given, a parent's sacrifice to ensure no other child would suffer. And on the 3rd night, as they completed the final symbol, the church trembled. The 7 remaining possessed children shrieked in rage and terror as invisible chains wrapped around them, dragging them toward the foundation stones. Their bodies twisted and contorted as the entities tried to escape, but the binding held firm. "You can't do this," they screamed. "We are ancient, we are eternal, we were here before your kind and we will be here after." "Maybe," Augustus said quietly, "but not here, not in this place, not anymore." The children's bodies were pulled into the foundation stones themselves, merging with the rock and earth, sealed behind the reinforced symbols. Their screams faded to whispers, then to silence. The church fell quiet. For a long moment no one moved. Then Father Bernard spoke. "It's done. They're bound. As long as these symbols remain intact, they cannot escape." Augustus looked at the foundation, at the ancient binding now reinforced and restored. We'll need to guard this place, make sure it's never disturbed, never renovated in a way that might weaken the seal. Martha nodded. I'll create a trust, dedicated to maintaining the church exactly as it is. Every generation will know what lies beneath. Every generation will guard the seal. Rebecca Foster, looking younger now that the entity no longer suppressed her aging, spoke. I'll help. I lost 25 years to that thing. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no other child loses even a moment. The Whitmores held their daughter, their real daughter, finally returned to them. Emma looked up at Augustus with clear, normal eyes. Will they ever get out, Reverend? Augustus knelt down to her level. Not as long as we remember, Emma. Not as long as we stay vigilant. Not as long as we love each other enough to fight for each other. Over the following weeks, the church changed. The photographs of possessed children were archived in a sealed vault, accessible only to the trustees who would guard the knowledge of what had happened. A memorial garden was planted in honor of the children who had been freed: Samuel Merriweather, Alina Johnson, Timothy Ashford, and all the others who had finally found peace. And in the foundation, behind locked doors that only Augustus and the trustees could open, the symbols glowed faintly in the darkness, a constant reminder that some prisons must never be opened, some doors must never be unlocked. Augustus Blackwell continued to serve as reverend for another 30 years. Every night before he locked the church, he would descend to the foundation and check the seals. Every night they held strong. But sometimes in the deepest hours of darkness, he would hear whispers from the stones, patient whispers, waiting whispers. We are bound but not destroyed, they seemed to say. We are trapped but not dead, and all bonds weaken with time, all seals eventually break. And Augustus would renew the symbols, strengthen the binding, and pray that future generations would be as vigilant as he had been. Because some evils cannot be destroyed. They can only be contained. And containing them requires eternal watchfulness. The photograph of Constance hugging Samuel remained in the vault, a reminder of where it all began. And sometimes, late at night, Augustus would look at that image and see not just a mother embracing her stolen son, but a warning to all who came after. Look closely at the children around you. Look into their eyes, and if you see something ancient looking back, if you see that too-wide smile and those lightless eyes, remember that love is the only weapon that can save them. And pray you're not already too late. The Old Presbyterian Church on Millbrook Road still stands. The symbols in its foundation are checked monthly. The vault remains sealed. And every generation, new trustees are sworn in to guard what lies beneath. Some say on quiet nights, you can still hear children's laughter echoing through the empty sanctuary. But those who know the church,